Cube Sunday morning. It is a great Sunday morning, and like any good Sunday mornings, we are having some technical difficulties. But there is no technical difficulty that you cannot make up for with great guests. And right now, I'm sitting here looking at the face of L.M. Kate. Kate, before we get into dinosaurs and anthologies, say good morning and tell us about yourself.
Good morning. I'm Kate, and I'm an author who lives in Oakland, California. So it is a lovely West Coast morning, and the sun is shining finally. Um, and right now, I'm sitting on, I think, a couple of published stories, and then I've got a couple of books in the works. So that's what we're looking forward to at this point.
I love it. So you're in the breaking in phase, huh?
Yep.
There
Sure feels broken.
So you can still remember that utter moment of bliss when you sold your first story.
I can.
So what was that first story?
That first story, not only did I sell it, I resold it in the first year under a different title. So in Boundary Shock Quarterly, which I should have a copy of right here, and I don't. It's over there? No. Boundary Shock Quarterly number 18, Veterans. The story is called Losing the Tether. And the same story is under the title Midwives in I forget the name. It's this really long title. It's a Joker's Wild anthology by Olivia Tierman. And it's very queer as well.
Well, very cool.
This is what the Boundary Shock Quarterly looks like.
All right.
Number 18.
No, it's okay. I can't see it real well because
Okay.
it's a small picture.
Yep.
Well, I see that Rich has showed up and has Cliff. So is there any last thing you want to say where you're able to dominate the screen and have your will be done?
Yes, everyone should be reading about space dinos because space dinos. That's what I want everyone to know.
Space dinos,
yes.
I wish I could put on my echo chamber voice, but I can't. So here we come. I'm bringing in Cliff and Rich. And I'm going to let Rich, Cliff, I see your notes saying you're there, but I mean, come on, man. I've got this person here that's telling me about her books.
Oh, we know, Cliff. Rich!
Okay, is that me? Okay, and Kate, I saw you got your dinosaur shirt on.
I do.
Yes.
I have successfully done tech support.
Yes, we are. Mission accomplished. Thank you so much.
So I don't have a dinosaur shirt on at the moment, but I have my little buddies.
Oh, great!
So they're here for this. So I was helping Richard get on. So I don't know what you guys were talking about for the last few seconds, but
I did hear something about what makes good science fiction.
Yeah, that was last month or the month before. Anyway.
Okay.
So, good morning, everyone. I'm Cliff Winnig. I'm here with Richard Chwedyk and Kate Johnston with a T in Johnston. And we are gonna just talk dinosaurs. If you hadn't figured that out yet, that's the subject, dinosaurs. And the panel of experts that I have assembled for this morning's dinosaur panel. Richard is the Nebula award-winning author of the Saur, S-A-U-R series, and he won a Nebula for one of the novella in that series called Bronte's Egg. But they're about the future genetically engineered talking pet dinosaurs. Then they're little, and they they get abandoned by their owners, and it's a lot about ethics and humor and dinosaurs in that series. And I would love to see a book of all of them, but that's just me.
Me too.
So we were just talking before the stream about how much money you can lose doing anthologies. You can also lose money doing collections. So any presses out there who feel like losing money doing a collection of his saur stories, that would be great. And then Kate, in addition to writing science fiction involving dinosaur soldiers, that is a work in progress that I've seen bits of and loved every bit that I've seen. She has announced publicly that she is going to be editing an anthology of dinosaur-related stories and other like Pleistocene era story, anything, and that I'm looking forward to. If I can get my act together, I'm going to submit something. But either way, I'm going to enjoy reading it. And that's their qualifications. My qualifications is I have a friend group that includes these buddies. These are of recent vintage. This is one of the plastic dinosaurs from my own childhood. Perhaps older than many of the viewers. I don't know. What I love about plastic dinosaurs is they're made with oil, which of course comes from dinosaurs. And so plastic dinosaurs are made from dinosaurs. Anyway, that's my dumb fun fact. So my first question for my panel of dinosaur experts is, why dinosaurs? What's interesting about dinosaurs? Why do you want to write about dinosaurs? Why do you want to read about dinosaurs? Take it away.
Okay, Kate, you want to go first?
Sure. Why dinosaurs? Why not? What's interesting about them? Pretty much everything. And I think I come to dinosaurs wanting to do more of the hard science kind of place for it. So, like, there's so much we don't know. And in those gaps are where fiction I know is how do we hatch the first ones? And I'm going to answer that question in my book. And things like that. But everybody has a favorite dinosaur. And no shade to David Why Sharks Matter. Not everybody has a favorite shark. So I do.
I have a favorite both, actually, but
oh, there you go. See,
brontosaurus and whale shark. But that's me.
That's the good people have sharks as well. But I think it's a huge part of our imagination that we didn't exist then, so we just have to imagine them. And I think that they are weirder than we can imagine, and I'm excited about that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I once answered this question at a panel at the Winnipeg WorldCon, where I had all sorts of big names and folks around me. And I said, dinosaurs seem to come from an era when God had more imagination. And I was immediately assailed in the audience by an atheist who says, "Oh, you believe in God?" And I said, "I don't know. Do you believe in metaphors?"
No. If you're a fundamentalist, maybe you don't. Everything is
and I said, I mean, look around here. I mean, look, cats are great. Dogs are great. Hippos are great. All the wonderful, but do they have plates? Do they have spikes? Do they have elongated necks? Do they have, do some of them run around as bipeds? I think that the moment that probably, and forgive me if I use another metaphor. It's like there are two possible places where I found religion about dinosaurs. Yeah, here we go again. Oh, you've got religion? No. The earliest movie I remember watching on television was a movie called King Dinosaur. It was Burt Gordon, who is famous for making the cheapest and worst movies ever. And it was but there were these giant lizards wearing these little appendages on them, and somehow it looked, it appealed to me, and like, wow, look at those big creatures going around. But maybe the moment that was even more profound was the first time my parents took me to the Field Museum.
Ooh.
And in the Great Hall at that time, they had an assembled skeleton of a theropod dinosaur, which at the time they thought was a Gorgosaurus. This goes back to Kate saying there's so much we don't know yet. Um, but they had it labeled as a Gorgosaurus, and it was a sort of a like a Tyrannosaurus, a few feet smaller in dimensions than that. But this thing was sitting in the middle of this great hall, this marble hall at the Field Museum. And I just looked at it and said, this is my life. It was just the most amazing thing I had ever seen. Are there things this big? Look at, why are the forelimbs so short? And I wasn't looking at it as they should have longer arms. I didn't know. I'm just looking at it.
We still don't know.
Well, this is what
actually.
one thing that I've tried to explain, to folks who keep saying, "Oh, theropods and those short forelimbs." It's like, have you seen those jaws?
Yeah.
And it's like, what you would be done by the forelimbs, those jaws could do, 10 times over. So, that, I went mad about dinosaurs, and at this time,
And how
it
old
was
were
like
you? About
I was maybe about 4 years old, so it was still the late 1950s. And let me tell you, in the late 1950s, dinosaurs were not as popular as they are now. Um, when I would draw pictures of dinosaurs in my kindergarten class, the teacher would say, "Oh yes, these are the little dinosaurs. These dinosaurs, and they were all killed by a big avalanche that fell on them, and that's why we find them underground." And that's like, avalanche. Avalanche has nothing to do. I mean, there's not an avalanche over the whole planet.
that was one heck of an avalanche to kill all
And all these,
dinosaurs.
yeah,
worldwide.
and all these, all my classmates were saying, "Ooh, dinosaur boy. Ooh, you're a dinosaur boy. One day you're gonna turn into a dinosaur." And so it was like I was marked,
That's
as the kid
bizarre.
who liked dinosaurs, and it was suddenly some sort of terrible thing. You're not interested in wheels. You're just interested in dinosaurs. Why aren't you interested in baseball? Why don't you know Nellie Fox's name, but you know Brontosaurus? You're weird. Um, n- Now, I go to stores and museums and stuff like that, and I see kids, hundreds and hundreds of kids who are just crazy about dinosaurs, and they're in their own little heavens as they're playing around with this stuff. And I said, this is my generation. I know I'm an old man, but this is what I should have grown up with, the time when you could say without too many people snickering behind their backs, everybody loves dinosaurs, of course. Okay, that's my story there.
That's a great story. When I was preschooler, which was a little bit later, but not super later, I love dinosaurs. All the kids love dinosaurs, and at like age 4, I could use my vocabulary was simple words, mostly your basic vocabulary, but also like ankylosaurus, brontosaurus, brachiosaurus, triceratops, stegosaurus, styracosaurus. They were all in my vocabulary before kindergarten, and I had these model kits that were like all the assembled different prehistoric, like it was cavemen and cavewomen and early mammals and dinosaurs, all that made
those
together to
cavemen,
a diorama, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it just fascinated me over the years. It's because we kept learning so much, right? Like when I was a kid, the idea was dinosaurs were these cold-blooded, slow-moving reptiles, and they were really big, cold-blooded, slow-moving reptiles. And if you look at like even something like Land of the Lost, which totally, David Gerald's on this podcast on the last Sunday with Jim Wright, and he was the showrunner basically for Land of the Lost, head writer. And the dinosaurs, which were great, were not that fast moving. Like they could outrun the T-Rex, and they could because that was in the early 70s, that was the thinking about dinosaurs. They were actually much livelier than the paleontologists. And then there was the big debate, cold-blooded versus warm-blooded, right? And then they decided maybe it was like tepid-blooded, like medium warm, right? Right? And
we can't decide anyway. So
I'm watching these paleontologists kind of, in science, our general interest science articles, going back and forth, and like they don't know anything. They're just spitballing. I mean, they're doing research, but they're really. I loved watching the scientific method and the progress of the debate of science through the lens of paleontology, because there was so much debate and it was so lively. I have a book that it's in the other room, but it's a book of dinosaur art, and it's over time. So it's like, this is how we first imagined them, when the first skeletons, the fossils were uncovered, and this is how every decade, how artists have interpreted dinosaurs, right? And now we think they've got feathers, right? A lot of them. And except one of the recent things that I would have loved as a kid is this particular fossil.
Whoa!
Right?
Yes.
The notosaur.
Yes, which you can see what it looked like, right? Like, holy moly, that's a dinosaur, right? Yeah. I mean,
ankylosaurs don't get enough, cred. I love those. We need more ankylosaurs in our culture.
Yeah, this one, that's his face. Like, it looks like Godzilla, right? And of course, there's a special place in my heart for Godzilla too. I like watching Godzilla movies, but I loved Land of the Lost growing up, and I loved anything that had dinosaurs, even like dopey movies like I Was a Teenage Caveman that had dinosaurs, and then the twist ending, they're not really dinosaurs, but anything like that. The one with Raquel Welch, right? 1,000,000 years BC.
Well, that was 1,000,000 years BC. I was the only kid at the Roosevelt Theater downtown who was watching the movie for the dinosaurs.
Well, you had to be the right age or young enough to not care about Raquel Welch.
It was just like, Raquel Welch. I was like, well, Raquel Welch, okay, that's all fine and good in that, but where, the dinosaurs?
It's a pteranodon. Come on,
The Allosaurus is in the Ceratosaurs that are chasing.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I find really interesting is that, the more we find out, the weirder it gets.
Yeah.
Because, I grew up later than you did. So there were things that I grew up just taking for granted that you didn't. We had more knowledge in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. And now we have even more of it. I'm actually working with Joan Slanchewski at ICFA. She is doing we're talking about doing like dinosaurs and their world sort of thing for biology breakfast next year. And one of them is because dinosaurs had an endocannabinoid system like most vertebrates. But cannabis didn't actually evolve until about 35, 40 million years ago. So there was some cannabid flower that they were eating or somehow experiencing that they had receptors for, and we don't know why. But if you would like to sit back for a couple of seconds and just imagine a Tyrannosaurus Rex with the munchies.
That this is just had the anniversary of the movie Caveman starring Ringo Starr, in which that happens. That scene occurs where there was a T-Rex or an Allosaurus, and it gets totally stoned, and it's just like falls over.
And the thing is, if you get people who say, "Oh, well, cannabis hadn't evolved yet," and you go, "Okay, we aren't even going to have the receptor discussion. But I'll tell you what had evolved: psilocybin.
Yeah.
That's
well, and there's nothing to preclude cannabis had an evolution too.
No.
So that there is an evolutionary line to the cannabis that we recognize today. So that that may be 35, 40 million years, but there may be a cannabis ancestor, if I may use such a phrase, that predates it, that could have been a large part of the dinosaur culture, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no,
that's the other thing. So we keep learning more stuff, and
can I just throw in? Can I just throw in one thing, because and we'll go on to this.
You're here to throw on things. That's why you're here.
At that same Worldcon panel, because at the time, James Gurney had done his first Dinotopia book. Which
beautiful art.
and
beautiful art.
Oh, well, I had seen some of the original paintings at the Chicago Worldcon, and I again, my jaw just went down. But a couple of years later, and
I was at that con. Yeah.
At Winnipeg, there was this big, it was a dinosaur panel, and somebody saying, well, we've got interest now because of Jurassic Park and Dinotopia, and that this interest in dinosaurs, is this going to continue? Is this just a fad, or is it going to break off? And one of the panelists said something, well, they said, well, we have learned so much about dinosaurs, and since it was 65 million years since extinction, and that we're probably not going to learn that much more about it. Now, that was about 1993, if I remember, 93 or 94, and just think about how much we have added to dinosaur knowledge since this guy had said, well, I guess we've probably learned everything we're going to know now. and it makes me laugh every time. And a few years ago, I was talking to Rob Sawyer, and I said, do you remember the guy saying that on the panel? Rob doesn't remember it. So if Rob doesn't remember it, it didn't happen. But it's like, no, I remember somebody saying, whoa.
I would remember that. Yeah. That's right up there with, like, after the Soviet Union fell, it's the end of history. I'm like, yeah.
Right. Yes. End of history. You see how that works.
Yeah. So anyway, one of the things that I loved learning about dinosaurs since I was a kid. Well, first of all, when I was a kid, it was the New York Museum of Natural History. I spent the good chunk of my childhood in Tennessee, but my early childhood was in New York. And so we would walk in, and there'd be this brontosaurus that we later learned was a carnivore's head stuck on a sauropod's body and whatever. But it was there when I was a kid, and it was just amazing, right? And then there was a T-Rex and all this other stuff, and I'd be just like, oh, right. So I recognize that feeling.
The reason I wanted to go to New York was for the Museum of Natural History. Other people think, oh, I want to see Broadway, I want to see the Empire State Building. It's like, no, I want to see the collection at the Museum of Natural History.
Yeah, I had 2.5 hours to spend at that museum. And so rather than just kind of trying to run through every exhibit as quickly as I could, I mapped out where all the meteorites were that you could touch and went and touched them all. But one of the things I want to plug at this point is a book, and I don't remember who it's by, but it's called All Yesterdays. And it's a piece of, it's art. But basically, the premise is T-Rex could not have been this scary thing 100% of the time. They had to sleep. Oh, thank you. It's by C.M. Kozeman, Darren Naish, and John Conway. But they couldn't just be eating and scary and killing stuff all the time. They had to poop. They had to sleep. They had to have conjugal relations. There weren't going to be any more. Yes, exactly. There weren't going to be any more little dinosaur eggs. I mean, they had other stuff. They didn't have to wash dishes. That's what they didn't have to do. But everything else, they did. So, we have to think about, how did they sleep? I mean, if we think about how intelligent animals play, cats learn to play. They learn to kill by basically torturing small animals that their mothers bring them. Think about how that scales back to a T-Rex or an Allosaurus or a Troodon. And the other thing is that if you're really, really interested in kind of the science of things, one of the foremost paleontologists on the planet at this time does Balticon every year. So get your butt up to Baltimore and go see Thomas Holtzcott.
All right. So one of the things that we learned, I don't know why there's an echo when I'm doing it. I'm going to sit further away. One of the things we learned since I was a kid was about hadrosaur sinuses. So we know that they had this really complicated sinus system in their bones, and we can only wonder how much more complicated their cartilage was, because we don't know. But from just the bones, they could easily have made like 20 odd different sounds, and I'm sure that with the cartilage. So that has gotten me wondering a lot about like hadrosaur intelligence, and if the meteor hadn't hit, would they have evolved a civilization? Did they even have some kind of like Paleolithic civilization? Were they like, great apes? We don't know, because the artifacts wouldn't have survived for 65 million years. But I love speculating. I actually, in my as yet unsold science fiction novel, there's an alien species based on hadrosaurs for that reason, because they can do all that communication. So as much as I love Brontosaurus, because for a while Brontosaurus didn't exist. It was just Apatosaurus. Right? Like the guy the paleontologist who discovered Brontosaurus, that incorrect skeleton at the Museum of Natural History, and Apatosaurus, when he realized they were the same species and he had to get rid of one, he got rid of Brontosaurus? Like, how detached from the public could you possibly be? Like, no one cared about Apatosaurus. But then they found another.
That's like trying to declare Pluto is not a planet.
Right. And that's also the Museum of Natural History.
You want to see a mob in front of the Academy of Sciences?
Yeah,
with their pitchforks and torches and that. Yeah, just mention that.
Yeah. But fortunately, we discovered another species, and that became Brontosaurus, and that's fine. So we have Brontosaurus again.
I love these sort of parent-child exchanges with one says Apatosaurus, the other one says Brontosaurus, the other says Apatosaurus, Brontosaurus, Apatosaurus, Brontosaurus. All right.
No one has Apato burgers in the Flintstones, I'll tell you that. But anyway,
the other thing I was going to throw in about hadrosaurs is that the Mayasaurs were hadrosaurs as well, and the hadrosaurs, are the ones where they found the egg laying procedures and the nest and all of that. And of course, Mayasaurus is is good mother saurus, good mother lizard. That the notion that they may have had a more developed system, a culture, all of
that.
There you go. Yeah, and there's Corythosaurs and Pachycephalosaurs and Parasaurolophus.
I love the way those roll off the tongue.
Yep. In fact, there is a version of this in print already. Stephen Baxter has a chapter in his book Evolution that is all about a society of intelligent troodons that are basically herding the large dinosaurs, and it's awesome. It's great. Stephen
Baxter is good. Another vote for Baxter. He's good writer.
I've only read his Zealy stuff, so I haven't read that one.
Yeah, and I was not a huge fan of his Geely stuff, but he did one called Titan, where we cannibalize the space shuttles and put them into two that are now full, and then we send them off to Titan because it's the end of the space era. and it's a fantastic book, and it's wonderful. And if you were alive when the shuttles were still going, it's incredibly nostalgic stuff. I'm still trying to figure out, with the dinosaurs, we kind of run into the problem of how come we wouldn't recognize what their civilization would look like. And it's like, well, it wouldn't look anything like ours, and we're famously poor at recognizing things that don't look like the society that we're used to.
So if there were a dinosaur culture, it could be, within the fossil record all around the scientists who are, digging up, and they wouldn't recognize it as such. 10, 20 years from now, somebody would be going over old records and photographs and saying, don't you realize that this thing over here that doesn't actually, it's not a natural formation? It's like somebody's narrowed out that plane, and everybody, and all these paleontologists who retired 30 years ago are sort of looking with these Don Martin faces going, duh. Oh, my God, I was sitting right on top of this.
Well, we had that moment where, when I was a kid, again, they thought, oh, they lay their eggs and abandon them, right? As if. Right, and then they had this whole species named after like egg eater because they assumed the fossilized adult next to the eggs was robbing the eggs of some other dinosaur, but it was her eggs, right?
It was Oviraptor.
Yes,
yeah, Oviraptor, wasn't it?
Some egg eater, right?
Yeah,
and her eggs. I forget exactly what raptor is, but it's. I love, by the way, who doesn't love velociraptors? There's a wonderful song by the Double Clicks called Velociraptor, where they say it's okay that you were actually, chicken-sized and not like in Jurassic Park. It's all right, Velociraptor. It's a great song. Check it out, Double Clicks, Velociraptor. Anyway, so like that was a complete, just like what Rich was saying, it's a complete reversal of what they thought. They thought this is attacking the eggs, and it's like, no, it's defending the eggs. And they had to do a total paradigm shift. But I'm reminded of one of my favorite Far Side cartoons, which has a bunch of white-coated scientists with clipboards and some dolphins in a tank, and they're listening, and they're like, it's making another one of those habla español sounds, right? And they have written in like phonetic English, habla español with this many marks and que pasa, and right, and they like have no idea what these dolphins are saying.
Yes, it almost sounds like a civilized language.
Right? Oh, and we have cat.
Oh, the cats always show up for the shows. I have a writers group that meets every month, and one of the people, and the cat always puts his butt up on the screen at some point or another, and we see the tail wagging. So,
well, that's the point of videos, right? Is to show my butt if I'm a cat, right? I mean,
yeah.
And I'm suddenly wanting to see like a dinosaur, sort of like with a time scope, looking forward in time and tapping the screen. Is this thing on?
Well, I solved that whole problem by having the saurs be a part of a genetic engineering creation. That it's like, well, it's shaped like a dinosaur, but it's not. The saurs vary in size. Some of them are 1.5 meters, like Diogenes, the librarian who passed away in one of the. He was about 1.5 meters tall. So there's some big guys, and then there's some little guys, and then there's some little guys. And one of the things that I think I mentioned in one of the first stories or so is the whole issue of brain size. Agnes, the stegosaur, it was the most outspoken, of the saurs at times, has heard so many times, oh, and see the stegosaur, it was so big, and it's got these spikes and all sorts of things. And
it's got a thagomizer.
And well, and the Thagomizer, of course, named after the late Thag Simmons. And now all the paleontologists you talk about the Thagomizer. But you know, you know, the stegosaurs are like, oh, they had a brain the size of an almond in that. And you know, and Agnes said, brain size isn't everything. You know, I mean, you humans, you might have too
Mm-hmm.
much brains over there, and for all the brain you got sitting in your head, how much do you use? It seemed
I love Agnes.
Agnes, at times speaks for so many of us. I mean, as far as the stories go, and as far as science fiction goes, I remember one time, um, one of my when I was still working for a newspaper, somebody said, "Oh, I love Bronte's Egg and Measure of All Things, um, and I love Axel. You should do more Axel and less Agnes." And I said, "You can't have Axel without Agnes. There is a kind of
Without
balance
Agnes.
there,
Yeah.
and the Axel's just childlike, amazement. The Axel's sense of wonder is one thing, and then you hear Agnes's, voice coming from the background saying, "All property is theft."
If you're watching this and deciding, I really want
Yeah.
to read these stories, tell your local publishers because they were all published in fantasy and
Yeah.
science fiction.
Yeah,
And
well, I've had a book manuscript that was put together. So I had an agent friend who suggested that I write a few sections that um, sort of tie together some sort of continuity between the stories.
like a fix-up.
Um, that was kind of the idea, is that well, if you have a few of these shorter stories together, they'll sort of, it's not a novel, but it kind of looks like a novel. um, so I created the character who works at the Mount Herman Observatory, who takes all of Axel's messages to space guys. At the observatory, everybody sort of uh, 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 takes a turn um, answering the replies about what messages they would send
Aw.
out, on some of the radio telescopic devices that they have there. And there's one who is you know, she sees, it's like, these messages from Axel. It's like, is this for real? Is this a joke? Is this some sort of a scam? And so, between each of the stories, she's finding out more and more about the real source. And there are times when she says, "I've had enough of this stuff. I'm going to go read this novel by Ellis Lawrence Cartwright, who's my favorite novelist." Who, yes, and you're laughing because that is that's Preston. That's Preston's pen name when he has written these. And
Ah.
so she's like, my favorite novelist is a saur, but I didn't know it. Anyway, we've sent this off to a bunch of publishers. A publisher who will remain unnamed, but is a pretty good small press publisher, and I've loved their stuff for ages. Um, Said, "Well, we're going to pass on this book. I'm sure it'll make a great movie." And I just sort of, it's going to make a great movie, but you don't want to publish it. In other words, you you don't want to. It's like, suddenly I realized I don't even understand small press publishing. I've always had a hard time understanding, quote, professional publishing, but it was like small press publishing. I mean, you don't want to try this. So it's been sort of frustrating, and I am on the verge of maybe, once I have finished this latest novella, which has been delayed because I've been involved in this uh, uh, unhappy. Well, no, it's not unhappy. I'm being crabby, but doing all this teaching. Um, you know, I've been the utility man for the Columbia College English and Creative Writing Department, and so I've ended up teaching this Ray Bradbury class and horror writing and all. Whenever
And
something,
Tolkien.
yeah, and Tolkien now. Um, and I'd be the last, if you told me 10 years ago, oh, you'll be teaching a Tolkien class, it's like, oh, yeah, now you make big funny. It's not going to happen. But once the term is done in May, I want to seriously get back. It's a novella that's called Sinbad. And once I have that, I'm going to see if I can tie who Axel calls the space lady. Her name is Sarah Satya Murthy. It's an Indian last name, but she grew up in Wichita, Kansas, because her parents were technical people, and that's where the jobs were. But I want to be able to tie that together, and that'll even be more novelistic than before. But and not only that, but Axel for the first time will be the chief narrator of the story.
Ooh, do we ever find out more about Space Frog?
This is a big question here. Is TV Frog going to appear in this latest novella? I will not say, but TV Frog is the presence of TV Frog will be quite a part of the novella once I get this thing together.
Richard, I read that story so long ago, and I was obsessed with it for a very long time. And I don't remember where we were. I think it was at a WorldCon. And I was talking about you, and somebody was like, "Oh, hold on a second," and they're like, "Oh, here's Richard." I'm like, "Ah!" So yes, you can. You absolutely can meet your heroes, and they are still heroic, and it's awesome, especially if they're Richard Chwedyk.
So these are a couple of the covers of magazines that feature issues that feature saur stories. So if you can't wait, like go on eBay or someplace and like buy the back issues.
There's 4 of the covers were done by Bryn Barnard, who has done a brilliant job illustrating, doing cover illustrations for the source stories. Just I'm always surprised and delighted with what Barnard comes up with for a cover on those. So
and was Bronte's Egg in any of the Nebula anthologies or anything?
Yes, it was. As a matter of fact, I had this every now. I don't bring up the work of Richard Chwedyk, when I teach, a class, but somebody said
that's my job.
You're one of the only professors in creative writing department who's got a Wikipedia page. And I said, can I find a copy of Bronte's Egg? I said, I'll bring a copy next week. And it was the now I forget. I think it was the 2004 Nebula anthology has Bronte's Egg in it. It was the anthology that was edited by Vonda McIntyre.
Oh, nice.
One of my all-time favorite writer people. Vonda was just wonderful person. I love her so much. And she slipped in a few edits between the F&SF version, and the one that came out in the anthology. Very subtle little pieces, but when she was putting it through, I would get these emails from Vonda saying, if we do this and this and this and this, and I said, go ahead.
I love that she did that because it's totally cheating in a Nebula anthology, right? Like these are the stories that won Nebulas, as tweaked by Vonda McIntyre. That's just delightful.
But if you're going to have anybody tweak your stories,
right?
Vonda is one of the best people to have done it. Yeah,
sure. Yeah, that's a great story. Thank you for that. Kate, talk more. We've been talking too much.
Oh no, I have one of the Nebula Award Showcase anthologies in my shelf, and I was like, I kept not being able to find more of them because none of the rest of them use the word showcase in the title, and Google sucks. So I just pulled up the entire page of them and went, well, my TBR pile just tripled in size. So yeah, and actually I have not read any of the other like stories in that world, Rich. I
Really?
have
Okay.
Yeah, I've only gotten Bronte's Egg because I didn't have the other things. I just ordered the Hartwell #7, so I will go have that. But
Yeah,
yeah,
so the measure, the
so
measure
good.
of all things got put in the
Yes.
in David Hartwell's collection.
And just
And-
Tybor's castle and Tybor's little hat. Ah!
Yeah. And
So
Tybor's
yeah,
hat.
I love that entire thing, and I love that there is a world in which we did screw them up, but we are also trying to do our terrible best at undoing what we did, which is very human. That's what we do. It's like, what? What did Douglas Adams parenthetically, if you put a big red button in the side of a cave that was away from everybody and had painted, do not touch, it will end the world, the paint wouldn't have time to dry. That sort of thing. So yeah, and we're coming from very different takes on dinosaurs, although I do have the little piece about the dinosaur falling in something with a pump, like an oil derrick, which that'll be in my anthology, I'm sure, because I'll publish something of mine in it. But there's so much stuff. There's hundreds of millions of years to play with this. And one of the reasons that I said for the anthology, like, you can write anything set in the period. So if you're going to write about a mammal trying to run around in dinosaur footsteps, do it. Go ahead and do that. We're not doing people, as that's too long ago. But you can make an argument for nearly anything. I mean, I can make an argument for actually, that cannabis plant having existed, even though we don't have the fossil record, because if you think about it, we don't have a fossil per year since the Devonian period. That's how sparse the fossil record is. So there's all sorts of stuff that could have been there that we just don't have existing. Again, going back to Stephen Baxter, the book is called Evolution. He posits that there's such a thing as an air whale. This big, very light thing that surfs only the upper atmosphere, eating like gnats and spiders that are up there and that sort of thing. And how would we even know if that would have existed? We wouldn't. And one of the nice things about all of the gaps, I mean, science is more whole than cloth. And what that means is that if you write carefully enough, the best scientists in the world will not be able to say unequivocally that this did not happen, because they can't say it didn't happen. It might have.
Which is great for writers. Yes.
Yeah. I love those gaps. They're wonderful. But yeah, that's totally where I'm headed with a bunch of this. I love like Stant Latore's work with the women riding dinosaurs and stuff like that. I think of them in my stories as giant parrots. So they play, they're dangerous, because they've got this giant, hydraulic death hook on the front. But they play. And they have needs, like, I need to cuddle, like, because parrots still need to cuddle, so there's that aspect of them being full creatures rather than just ravening death machines.
Sure.
So I'm really excited about looking into that. And actually the space fiction is mostly, the dinosaur part is mostly just her body type, and her, I guess you'd call it race or species. But I understand that bipedality is a thing and we use it very well. But that was, other than the theropods, and actually a lot of them too that didn't have the little tiny arms, because you're right, that's a head versus arms thing. If they had smaller heads, they had bigger arms. So you're looking at hadrosaurs and that sort of thing, and they had perfectly good hands. You know, they would wander around
using hands even.
Yeah.
Right?
Kate, so you haven't read in The Man Who Put the Bomb yet, have you?
No.
That was the latest. That was the latest one. That's the one with the pink car on the cover. There is a section in there where Agnes is lecturing to a group of little ones, as Agnes is wont to do. And yeah, that one, the Man Who Put the Bomb, and she is explaining why evolution went wrong as soon as bipedal creatures start taking over. And she's explaining, you don't have your head close to the ground. You don't, you're it's way up there, and it's possible to just get completely lost. And she said, what's the phrase that she uses? Perpendicular wrong, parallel good.
I love Agnes.
They're like Axel is sort of running up one of the little plastic stairs to the couch, and she says, you see, he's almost good because he's keeping himself mostly parallel, and she says, have you ever heard of war or any kind of war that was started by a quadruped? I rest my case.
There, demonstrandum.
The problem with humans is that they're standing up straight. If they got down on all fours, we'd be in better shape. So speaketh Agnes. So.
I like that.
I don't know that she's wrong. I can see it.
Well, Agnes knows that she's right.
Well, of course, because she's Agnes.
Of course, yes.
But this is exactly the sort of thing that I think people who ask authors things like, well, where did you get that idea? And how did I don't necessarily want to have, yes, it would be nice to have a little rocket statue. But the important part for me would be to so impact someone that 20 years later they're still talking about that character. They're still kind of obsessed with how Axel looks at the world, how all of that happened. And that's what I want to do is just make that happen. I want people to still be thinking about that.
Cool. All right, so we are getting toward the end. So I'm going to ask a final question of my distinguished panelists. And then, Kate, I'm going to ask you if you want to talk about your call for submissions. You can also
mention the deadline, definitely.
Yeah, so definitely. The deadline is right after the asteroid hit. No. And speaking of which, when I was a kid, we didn't know it was an asteroid, right? We had no idea what killed the dinosaurs. It's a big mystery. But anyway, tell me about your favorite dinosaur or favorite dinosaur fact, and then tell me your favorite story. So I will go first to demonstrate. So back at the 1991 Chicago Worldcon, one of the people that was there was L. Sprague de Camp, and he had written a story in response to the very famous Ray Bradbury time travel story where they crush a butterfly. And he wrote a story from the point of view of an Australian big game hunter who took rich tourists back in time to hunt dinosaurs. Yep. And he noted before his reading of this story that he wrote it in response to that story because Ray Bradbury got the time wrong. There were no butterflies at that time. And, he had all these science errors that he wanted to correct. And also, he was absolutely convinced that no matter how many dinosaurs you shoot, you don't change history. So And then he apologized for the fake Australian accent he was about to read the entire story in, which he did, and it was completely charming. But check it out. It's in a collection, and I forget the title of the collection, but it's by L. Sprague de Camp, and
it's called a Gun for Dinosaur.
Right. And it's just delightful. and if you know that it's like his snarky response to Ray Bradbury, it's even better. So that's
and there were a couple other like dinosaur related anthologies. One I think that Mike Resnick did, and one that Gardner Dozois did. And a Gun for Dinosaur was, I think Gardner did 2. He did Dinosaurs and then Dinosaurs 2, and that where he collected dinosaur related stories into a couple anthologies.
Nice.
Mike's might have been original. Yeah.
Rich, tell me your favorite dinosaur fact or your favorite dinosaur story.
Oh, there was the whole business of we're tyrannosaurs, theropods in general, but tyrannosaurs. Were they hunters or were they scavengers? And there was again one of these big debates that scientists and scholars get into. And I said, look, if a pizza is sitting on the table in front of you, are you going to go to the oven and do all and make it? If the food is already there, so. Why did a theropod have to be only a scavenger or only a hunter? It's like, oh, that pizza's there. That's been done. I'm not going to eat that. Yeah, the hell you are. So
Right.
that whole notion that dinosaurs are much more complex, than we've imagined. There's a certain amount that we can, is based upon an analogy to creatures that we know, but there's so much more that we don't know, and that's kind of the fascinating part for me with those saurs, or those dinosaurs, as compared to saurs, and it's part of what I want to reflect in the saur stories that I have written and the ones that I have yet to write.
So I want to just jump in and say a couple of things. The chat has been very lively, and I haven't had a chance to respond to it. But if you're watching this on rerun, check out the chat. I like Cheryl says eagles are both, which is true. Which reminds me of my favorite dinosaur fact that we've learned since I was a kid, which is that not all dinosaurs were birds, but all birds are dinosaurs. Yep. And every time I look and I see a bird or I listen to a bird, I'm like, that's a dinosaur, a cute little dinosaur. And if you want to know what an intelligent dinosaur species, how it would have evolved, look at corvids.
Yep.
Right? Crows, ravens, they're intelligent dinosaurs. Anyway, Kate.
Okay. Probably my favorite dinosaur right now is Parasaurolophus, and I don't know whether that's going to come through. I'm giving these out at cons.
Yes.
And it says Fiends of Kate on it. So yes. So find me at your next con and I'll get you one.
And it's super adorable.
But my favorite dinosaur right now are the ceratopsians. Because that's what I'm using in one of my books. And this is my favorite part about Brachyceratops right now. Brachyceratops is a dubious genus of ceratopsian dinosaur known only from partial juvenile specimens dating to the late Cretaceous, which means we don't know anything about this. Write whatever you want. So I'm trying to figure out like where I'm going to put it, because I need something about 4 feet tall at the shoulder that weighs about 1,000 pounds. 3 feet tall at the shoulder that weighs about 1,000 pounds, which we have animals that do that. That's easy. And somebody was like, oh, well, that's really dense. You don't have animals like that. I'm like, have you ever seen a horse? Like, really? Okay. You ever seen an alligator? Help. So yeah, that's a whole thing. And what's my favorite dinosaur fact? Actually, probably the one I already told you, which is that they have endocannabinoid systems. And so, now we know how the dinosaurs all died.
At least
far
they
side.
were. At least they were happy when they went.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They died doing what they loved.
Another great far side, of course, is the real reason dinosaurs came extinct.
Yep.
They're all like behind a rock smoking cigarettes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't think they were cigarettes, man.
Yeah, they were smoking weed. Like,
yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
like,
they may have been
look at the
smoking, but it
lines.
wasn't tobacco.
all right.
So yeah,
so at
read
this
more
point,
dinosaur stuff.
Okay,
I want our
what's
audience to read
what's
more
the deadline
dinosaur
on
stuff.
the anthology?
Oh, deadline on the anthology is 2/1/2025. Right
So
now
we've
I'm
got a
just
while.
using my regular email. I will have a website up shortly, and we will have a better place to submit than my personal email, which I'm not giving out right this second. So,
and as I recall, professional rates, right? This is a pro.
yes,
anthology.
professional rates for first run. I'm doing reprint rates for reprints, of course.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm. And also if you're an artist and you have dinosaur art, you may want to take a look at submitting maybe one thing for me to look at in terms of interior pages, because I think I have the cover done or like spoken for.
Cool. Oh, here's Bob and a friend.
I think here's and he's
that's an awesome friend.
I used to have a little chicken that rode around on my shoulder like that. I took my little tiny T-Rex model and I put it in the chicken coop when it was the same size as the chickens. And it was amazing to see the if you'd have just put a little bit of fur on one and changed out a beak for a jaws.
Mm-hmm.
Very similar. So I like to think that I raised dinosaurs in the backyard.
You did. And I also want to put a plug in for the shoebill stork, because those things are freaking dinosaurs.
Yep, along with the cassowary too. Dinosaur.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know what, guys? This has been incredible listening to you guys. I thought about letting you keep going on, but then Cliff had to go say, well, Bob's coming back soon.
All right, fine. Go away, Bob. We'll talk for another half hour. We'll see you then.
I was waiting for him to call your bluff.
All right. So David McDonald in the comments says Triceratops is his favorite dinosaur. Excellent choice, David.
Yes.
Triceratops is awesome. I'm also a big fan of Styracosaurus. Not only do I just like saying that word, but it had the horn structure was really cool.
My wife is big on Styracosaurus too. But in the source stories, I've got the couple, the Triceratops couple, Charlie and Rosie. And Charlie is the one who always says something inappropriate, and that when they're looking at the laid out body of Diogenes, is like, he says, "Oh, that looks pretty good. When I go, I want you to be laid out like that." And like Rosie's like, "Stop talking that way." Who does not love ceratopsians?
Right. And I love the idea that I think in the 80s that came about in the paleontology world, where they're like, no, they weren't solitary creatures. They were like the buffalo, thundering herds of them across the Great Plains. I'm just like, what? Like, how cool is that?
Yeah, no, that's definitely a thing. And one of the nice things about ceratopsians as a group is that there's so many of them. We don't know how many, and we don't know exactly which ones are real or not. We have a lot of bones, and we've made up a lot of names, but we don't know whether to lump or split, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so if at any point you need a ceratopsian to look a certain way, You can just make that up and say the first skeleton was found in 2067.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, why not?
Yeah.
You
I think
can
that's
hold-
part of I think that's part of the appeal of dinosaurs. Oh, you science fiction writers, you're all rockets, ray guns, and robots, aren't you? And it's like there's so much speculation about prehistory and the species that precede us, like the dinosaurs.
Mhm.
And there's so many roads that you can take, from the same simple paths, that it is just it's a wonderland for speculative fiction, science fiction writers.
Oh,
Um,
it
and
is. I have
that's why we're here.
well, I have Previ Muhammad who mostly writes horror, but she's a biologist.
Hmm.
And so I was like, why don't you write me a story about dinosaur parasites? And she got that look in her eye. Love that look. Because it means
Yeah, that's awesome. Well done. Well done.
Yeah.
You said the perfect thing. I'm reminded of Joan Vinge's famous quote, which is archaeology is the anthropology of the past and science fiction is the anthropology of the future.
Ooh.
And it really is parallel, right? Because they're both, the further you go in both directions, the more speculative it gets.
Yes.
In both directions, right? Because we don't know everything we think we know about the past. Even like 500 years ago is kind of mysterious. And, 65 million years ago, or 100 million years ago, or 200 million years ago, there was a period before land animals were there, before plants. There were these giant fungal towers all over the land. And like, what the heck was that?
I'm in the process of writing a short story or a novella in that Devonian past. And I talked to actually a really good Devonian paleontologist, and he's like, nope, you can just make shit up. And he was like, these are the big fungal towers. This is what the fungal structure looked like. And beyond that, run with it. I'm like, okay.
Right? Like, we don't know. We have fossils of it, right?
Well, that's why the big problem I have with the book I'm writing about, the ceratopsians. Like, we really, really do not know what they ate. We don't know because animals and plants fossilize separately. So you really aren't going to come up with, a dead dinosaur fossilized with a mouthful of blah. The best we can do is what's the fossilized excrement?
Yeah, we have some poop. Fossilized.
Coprolites.
Yeah.
That's a very popular word in this household.
Dinner table conversation.
The other thing is teeth wear as well. The kind of teeth and the way they're worn, and we can make a number of guesses about what the diet was from that. But knowing that is wholly a different matter. And if we go by what science tells us, we can't just say, oh, this is what we know, and we have to leave open the possibility that what we learn tomorrow is going to change the way we look at what happened yesterday and how it affects today. That's why one of my before earlier on, early candidate for early science fiction novelist is Lucian, who wrote well, first of all, he wrote this book because he was so pissed off at the Greek historians. He was a Syrian that was educated by the Greeks, and then reading their accounts, he was so he wrote this. He wrote a book that's translated as A True Story or A True History. That's the name of it. And then he tells you in the first two paragraphs that everything in this book is a lie. And I was like, yeah, okay, that's at least he's upfront and straightforward. It's like, yeah, it's all lies. Yeah, we went to the moon. How did we get to the moon? Well, there was this big water funnel and it just shot us straight up there. Oh, okay.
And Bob is back.
Oh, I think he's showing us the door because we're a little bit over time. So.
Oh, dudes. Overtime is when an hour and 20 minutes in, you post a note that says, Should I tell them what time it is? Audience erupts into no. But no, you guys, you see, I loved having a fellow anthologist on with Kate, sorry. And Richard, just listening to the knowledge that just oozes out of your pores as you talk. It's just amazing. And if we were sitting in a bar, you'd never hear me say a word. Be listening. But no, this has been enlightening because we have an anthology coming out. The Cliff is in Scott's Planet. Now, what we did there is we didn't go dinosaurs. In fact, I'm reading the Bible, and what it says here, this is not a dinosaur adventure, but if you want to have some fun, here's what the creatures of the land are. And we set it in the early Carboniferous period, so that we're limiting the big scary toothed monsters, and it's more curiosities. And we have forgive my pronunciation, Captorhinidae family of lizards.
This sounds fine to me.
Familiar?
I'm not as familiar with it. Yes.
I will say the Double Clicks, who wrote the wonderful Velociraptor, also have another wonderful song called Dimetrodon.
Ooh. Yeah. Which was not a dinosaur.
And I backed the Kickstarter and got a plush Dimetrodon as a result.
I ran into that song when I was doing a YouTube search for something else completely, and then if you come up on a YouTube search with a song called Dimetrodon, you have to listen to it.
Of course. It's a good one.
Until you've heard it. Yeah, it is. It's a very good song.
So, guys, I didn't mean to play Stump the Chump there with you. Trust me, that was the rough one.
I found them.
Oh, kind of interesting, aren't they?
Yeah, they really are. I love that they're stem to everything.
Well,
us, dinosaurs, everything.
Yeah, it's a terrestrial-like world with, like I say, in the early Carboniferous period, when a group of settlers, because they just discovered FTL, settled the entire galaxy that they could reach, because wow, what an opportunity. And then they found out that not every planet had everything it needed, and they needed support, and it cost money. And so corporate whomever then said, oh, we're abandoning these colonies. Have a nice life. Because
I wrote a poem about that.
Well, that was the whole concept. Is it says I was sitting there one day thinking about the lost colonies that they're always talking about, and saying, well, where did they come from? And so this is just an origin story for a lost colony.
Came from the corporate bottom line. That makes total sense.
Yeah. Oh, you got to love the corporate bottom line is responsible for so many evils in this world that go beyond that we could get in. Did I mention that our BQ Press is one of our three of our best sellers were absolute political fiction satire. I will plug it for a moment if you're interested at all. They're free on Kindle Unlimited, but that is Alternative Truths. And it was fun. But anyway, I want to say, Kate, best of luck with your anthology.
Thank you.
I know that, just listening to you talk, I get the sense of no nonsense that you need to have to be a good anthology editor. And no doubt that it will be a well done book.
Thank you,
Richard. It is great to meet you. And
same here.
You made me dig in, looking to see what I can find, so I will. And Cliff, as always, it's good. Now, this is Cliff. You are third Sunday, correct? Today's 21st.
Correct.
So you know what that means about next week. We have the Alice's dad, David Gerald. Wasn't Alice the name of the T-Rex in Land of the Lost?
It was the name of the Allosaurus.
Yeah.
The T-Rex was grumpy.
Allosaurus, yeah, okay. Well, anyhow.
They made a fight once. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Just check with Cliff. Anything you need to know about Land of the Lost.
Heck, yeah. Or ask David Gerald, because he was the showrunner, and he's next week.
He made it, you know. I mean, he made it what it was. Yeah.
All I know is that there are still many paleontologists wishing he'd have made better sketches when he was young. And he will, oh God, if he hears that, I will get him shit for it. But anyway, David Gerald and Jim
our lips are sealed. Don't worry.
Will be on next week to give us the best of rants. I mean, they're the best of rants or the worst of rants. But they are indeed rants, and they can do it better than anybody I know. So that will be next week here on B-Cube Sunday morning. And I will say this is where you wave goodbye as we say goodbye.
I want to say happy birthday to Liam,